I wanted to talk about something that... Mimi, stop! Stop! Quiet. I'm going to talk about the fact that I know that I seem very trippy in the way that I present myself. Honey, come on. Calm down. My little puppy is, she has her evening yippies. She likes to bite me. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. It's good. So I present very strangely, you know? I like to be outrageous and in the way that I dress and express myself. I always have been this way. I haven't made a lot of friends this way. I've always been quite alone and isolated because of it. I remember even in high school, middle school, I grew up in Middle Tennessee, in Nashville, for some reason. I was born in Manhattan, and then when me and my twin sister were 5 years old, our parents moved us to Nashville, to a little, Brentwood, Wildwood area, where it's middle Tennessee southern crap, which I hated, and always resisted. Stop! Calm down, honey. Precious. Come on. It's evening time resting. It's time to rest. Not go crazy. Not go crazy. Not go crazy. So, sorry. But I remember in high school, my 4 years of high school, that was when I really started to embrace myself, and I remember I dyed my bangs rainbow colors, which was so much fucking fun. And I went to a family reunion in Mississippi. My southern fucked up grandparents saw me, and my grandfather was very racist and very that kind of person. They actually had black servants, even when I was 19, when Thoth and I went to visit my grandmother. She was still alive when I was 19 years old. And she had a black servant. It made Thoth so uncomfortable that he left the area and couldn't deal with it. So when I was, from when I was like 15 onward, I discovered Cirque Du Soleil when I was 10. My mother took me to see Cirque Du Soleil, me and my twin sister, when we were 10 years old. Alegria was actually having their 1,000th performance at the Beau Rivage, which was a really cool little all-inclusive resort on the bayou near New Orleans. We used to go there all the time to see shows. We'd see Stomp and Cirque du Soleil, and lots of kind of Las Vegas-y type shows would go there. But but Alegria was stationed there. Like usually there were Usually Cirque du Soleil was like a big top show up until that point, but they did an indoor show for the Beau Rivage for their for their celebration, 10 years and 1,000 performances, and we just happened to be there when I was 10 for their 1,000th performance. And I'm pretty sure that I saw the original singer in white and a lot of the original performers that I later would see on the DVD that I'm totally obsessed with. So yeah, it was amazing. I remember seeing statues in the garden inside the hotel of the performers, all made up like paper mache statues. They looked real. And I just remember hearing the music for the first time when I was 10. I loved classical music, but I also loved alternative, strange music as well, Enya and all that stuff. And I also loved Steely Dan and The Who and all of that as well. So when I heard Alegria, when I heard this when I heard this music for the first time, it was like a conglomeration of all of the music that I love so much, and it was also in a made-up language. So after I saw Alegria when I was 10, I begged my mother to buy me every DVD, every CD of every album, of every production that Cirque du Soleil had ever done. And they had already been doing their thing for like 20 years when I first discovered them, which is really funny to realize now because, I wanted to be part of that. And they were already like a well-established commodity. They were like more closer to a corporation than the original whole street performance thing that they started out as, which I ended up becoming. And it's like over the years, I've thought of like if Thoth and I connected with Cirque du Soleil when they first started out, when they first got their big commission to do their first show from the government, when they were street performers and we were street performers, like if we had interacted at the same time, that we would have been part of what they were doing. But because they became a corporation and this huge conglomerate, successful multi-billion-dollar company, there was no way they would touch us with a 10-foot pole. I really like this makeup. Anyway, so my mom got me every album, every DVD that existed of Cirque du Soleil, and I grew up listening to Alegria and Saltimbanco and Tralian and La Nuba and Verikai, Mystère, and all these beautiful albums that I just loved. Just the music. I loved the music so much, and it shaped me, and it made me into who I am. And the costume, when I saw videos and pictures, and they had a really amazing interactive website back when I was a teenager, where you could click on different albums and different shows, and like it pulled into the world, and the animation was really old-timey and cute and fun and interesting, and each little button you pressed had a different little bit of music with it, and would tell like the story of each of the characters and the story of the show. It wasn't so corporate. It was more of a creative website. And I remember going to it all the time, like during computer class, and I was supposed to be learning how to type. I'd be looking at this Cirque du Soleil old-timey website and just being so inspired by it and saying, someday I'm going to be in that. I'm going to be in Quidam, or I'm going to be in Alegria. But I grew up becoming totally obsessed with the character of Zoe, who is a little girl who wears a little gray bowler hat and pink overalls, and she's a singer actually in Quidam. And the original singer was the daughter of the composer, Juritas, Audrey Brisson Juritas, that was her name. But her father was the original composer of Cirque du Soleil music, and he was like the best. And of course, his daughter was very into music and acting, and so he created a role for her in Quidam, and she had a very major role and sang incredibly beautifully for being 12 years old or something. So well-trained and lovely personality and just beautiful, pure voice. And I was very impressed. And I remember wanting to be like her. Wanting to be her, I wanted to be Zoe. And I named myself Zoe, actually. I took that name when I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. I grew up being called Caitlin, and I hated that name. So I went by Zoe, and then I went by like Zoe Indigo. And I remember my English teacher was the first person to accept my name choice. Not even my choir teacher liked it. And I would dress up like a clown every day and go to school dressed in tutus and opera jackets and my face painted and funny little body like full body suits and stuff. And I'd make little tutus and tops and little skirts and things. Mimi, no, ba 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 ba. Get off my shoe. Thank you. Sometimes I wonder if she knows English. So that was my childhood, and I totally obsessed and memorized every piece of music from Cirque du Soleil. And I wanted to be in it. I was a senior in high school. I was 18, 19 years old. I'm like, I'm not going to college. I'm going to audition for Cirque du Soleil and get in and be in Cirque du Soleil. That was my dream. So when I was 19, actually for a few years, probably from when I was like 16 and 19, I was in touch with people at Cirque du Soleil, casting directors and stuff. I'd been bothering them for years, saying I really want to be in Quidam, and I'm this age, and I know I can play the role, and I'm very youthful looking, and I have an amazing voice and da-da. And so I'd send in audition tapes and stuff, and I was actually in touch with, what was his name? One of the main casting directors was actually Michel Laprise. He was a really nice Quebecian Frenchman. And I've been in touch with him actually in the last couple of years. But we were in really heavy communication, and he wanted me to audition for Zoe when I was 19. So basically I went and auditioned for a couple of local colleges, colleges for, to go to music school and go to study voice and opera and music and be an opera singer, or to go and be in Cirque Du Soleil. So when I was 19, I actually got to send in a tape of me singing Zoe, singing a lot of the parts for Zoe. And that was probably when I was 16 or 17 years old. And I had to use pure tone. I couldn't use any vibrato. So I really had to change the way my voice sounded to do it. But it was really fun. And I knew all these pieces by heart, even though they were all in a made-up language. I knew every piece by heart. So it was really thrilling. I got to record with my dad in his studio in our basement, which was just record this music. It was an incredible experience for me, being so young. But we never heard back anything from them. We never heard anything from Cirque du Soleil. But then when I was 19, I got an audition. They said there's an audition happening, general audition happening in Florida, in Orlando. And so for some reason my sister got an audition too, I think just because I did. And I was very insistent with them. I was very pushy. 'Cause that's the way I used to be. I was very pushy, and that's how I made everything happen in my life. That's how I got out of Nashville and moved to New York and met Thoth and everything. So when I was 19, my mom set up for me to fly with my sister and her to Orlando and audition. And we rented a car, and it took us like 2 hours to find the studio where the audition was. And of course, my mom was an alcoholic, so she was very drunk. And we barely found the studio in time, and all the auditions were already happening, and we were like the last people in. And thankfully, they let us go in and audition. My sister went in first, and of course, she didn't know what the fuck to do. And then I auditioned, and I sang an opera aria and another piece in a different language. But I didn't know how to improvise, and one of the things that the people at the audition were saying is that you really need to know how to improvise, and you also need to know how to sing in several different styles. Like if you sing operatically, you need to know how to do like jazz or riffing or heavy rock or heavy metal or something. Just being able to do lots of different styles. And at the time, when I was 19, I was an opera singer, and I still am. I mean, that's the way my voice sounds. I don't have like any kind of other voice. I don't riff. But over the years, I've learned how to improvise. Like meeting Thoth, I learned how to improvise from him, because he just accepted me and let me do my thing and was there for me and held space for me, and I just could do it. That's all improvising is you just need space to be somebody to hold space for you and believe in you. And if you understand music and you understand harmony and melody, then you can improvise. I didn't know that at the time because both of my parents were heavily snooty musicians. My mom was like a classical opera singer who had been in lots of, she'd sung the lead in a lot of opera, a lot of choral music, and she'd also been in Disney movies and stuff and sung in the chorus of a lot of Disney movies. She's also was on Broadway for a minute, and so she was like an almost famous kind of person. My father also was like a major snooty recording engineer, had a big recording studio in our basement, and built a business from scratch and had all these people coming from all over Nashville to record with him. He had the best piano in town that I used to love playing really badly. And he loved rock music, and he was actually in a band called Stars long before I was born, long before my parents met each other, actually, when he was in his early 20s. And he was the lead rock guitarist in this band, and he wore like platform boots and high heels and tails and long black hair, and there are actually videos of him floating around on YouTube, which are pretty fucking amazing to see. But he was really just copying what was popular at the time. He really seemed a lot like he wanted to be like Pete Townsend. Pete Townsend basically started that whole rock god trend, and Steve Vai also, which I loved. I actually got to see Steve Vai when I was 16 with my one and only boyfriend at the time named Daniel. He took me to see Steve Vai and Joe Satriani when I was 16. I skipped a choir rehearsal and, who fucking cares? But so that was incredible. But so I did the audition for Cirque du Soleil, and I was so scared, and I was very womanly. I was kind of a womanly looking girl, at 19 years old. I wasn't tiny, and I wasn't flat chested and all of that, which I was really hoping to be. So when I auditioned for this role, that they wouldn't look at my body and say, oh, she's very much a woman. She can't play this little girl. And I think I wore something that was a bit revealing because I just didn't know what to wear. I didn't think about, how I looked was going to affect how I was going to be perceived and what kind of role I was going to get. That's just not how I've ever thought, ever, strangely. So I did the audition, and I sang all my opera arias and stuff, and I said, do you have anything else? Can you improvise? I'm like, no, I don't know how to improvise. And so they said, you're great, you're amazing, you're 19 years old and you can sing like that, and how incredible is that? But you can't improvise, so we can't have you. And I remember listening to other people auditioning, and people were like given a track and then improvised with it, which I was terrified of doing if I even got the chance. Now I could do it, head over heels, and I would have so much fun with it. But the irony is that now I can do all of those things. I can improvise, I'm very creative and all that stuff. And I don't want to be in Cirque du Soleil at all, because Cirque du Soleil is now a mega multi-billion-dollar corporation. They just hire you and fire you. They don't care, and they just use you up until you're in the trash. And Thoth actually auditioned for Cirque du Soleil as well on his own, and they said, oh, we'd have to create a whole show around you. But, that means, like, we won't do that because you're too unique. They actually need people to be pretty generic to be in Cirque du Soleil, because the whole thing, the idea is like it's Cirque du Soleil that people are going to see, not a specific person. And if you stand out too much and you're too original, they don't want that. So they try to make people, it's the same in acting and theater and music, is they really don't want people coming to see specific performers. They really want people to just go to pay to see an opera at the Met or at the Chicago Symphony or Boston Symphony or any of these things. They don't really want people to become stand out. But I think Cirque du Soleil is very much that way. That they want it all to be that people are replaceable. And I think in general in opera and music and theater, they don't want anybody to be too original, because then they're not replaceable. I know that probably happened with Michael Crawford with Phantom of the Operas, that he made that role so completely original and it was his own thing, that when they had to replace him, I think they were probably terrified, because they were like, well, he's unreplaceable. And now nobody will come and see the show anymore because Michael Crawford's not doing it anymore. And they were able to make it work. But I'm sure with any actors who've, titled a role and they're unreplaceable, that it's really hard for producers and stuff to then find a replacement and believe that they're going to be able to keep the show going, because most of the time they want to have really great actors, really great singers and musicians who are kind of generic and replaceable. And I'm not that. Thoth isn't that. And I've never been that. So instead of going to Cirque du Soleil, I remember looking out the back seat of the car, looking in the rearview mirror of the car and watching the auditioners walking out to have lunch, and just seeing that my dream was going away from me. It was the first major disappointment. And then my mom sent me and my sister to Disneyland for the day to try and, help us with our disappointment, because she knew we wouldn't get in. And then I went to college for a year in Kentucky to study opera and voice, and I actually I had a great voice teacher, a Spanish woman, who was very sweet and wonderful and really believed in me. But she kind of started me back in the basics, because I had been singing a lot of very complicated French coloratura arias and stuff with my teacher. When I was in Nashville, I had a really amazing voice teacher, Elizabeth and Jim Stith, who Elizabeth had sang the Queen of the Night at the Met many times, and she really loved me, and she really pushed me and gave me a lot of really complicated opera arias when I was 18, 19 years old. And so my voice teacher in college kind of pulled me back and had me sing little Spanish songs and little lilting, prairie songs and stuff. which I ended up loving, but it was frustrating because I really wanted to be singing, the doll aria and the Queen of the Night and, those famous, complicated, like Gilda's aria from Rigoletto and all those things. That's what I was able to do, and I wanted to do that. But she had to pull me back and was trying to. So then I actually ended up getting into a play. I ended up getting into The Tempest when I was 19 years old, and the theater wing was holding auditions, and I went in and I sang a little, aria and danced around and jumped around, and of course I'm very pixie-ish. I've always been that way. Also, that's kind of my style. So I look very pictures right now, actually. I think it's my ears. So I went in and I did this audition and I got the role of Ariel, the little fairy creature in The Tempest. But because I was so young, because I was only 19, and like it was kind of a shocking thing for a freshman to get the lead role in a play at that age. It was such a kind of politically no kind of thing to give such a young person in the school such a big role. So Andrew Kimbrough, my acting teacher, who was just amazing, he completely changed my life. So Andrew actually was the one who gave me the role of Ariel, but then he cast like 4 other freshmen and sophomores to play like the little spirits around me, I guess, or to try and maybe soften my ego a bit, because then I would have been like going around the school going like, I'm playing Ariel and I'm only 19 years old and whatever. And I was a big ego head at the time. I had every reason to be, because I was so above and beyond talented from everyone else around me and so committed to being an artist. Nobody else was going to be an actor like I was, or a performer. Like, I knew I was going to be an artist no matter what, and no one was going to stop me, kind of. So anyway, Andrew Kimbrough had me go into his office one day after I got the role, and he gave me these little written songs that Ariel was supposed to sing in the play. And these are little poems that Shakespeare wrote, 400 years ago. There were little warning poems or songs or whatever that were meant to be part of the play. And they came in different sections of the play to like warn different characters or cheer them up or sing to them or inspire them or romanticize them or whatever. So he gave me these little poems. I think there were 4 of them, 5 of them. And he said, go home and make songs out of these. And I was like, what? I'd never written a song before, even though he introduced me to Meredith Monk, which I love to this day. If I ever could write an opera like Atlas, there's an opera that she wrote called Atlas. It's all in a non-English language. And it's so beautiful, so melodic and beautiful, and it's just voices. And he introduced me to Meredith Monk soon after I got this opportunity. And so I went home, and I was so scared because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to write music. I didn't know anything about reading music or writing music. I never cared about music theory. I flunked on all music theory classes. So I just didn't care. I learned everything by ear. Actually, when I was in college, my last 2 years of college, I actually got the soprano section. I was the soprano section leader in the church choir. And the director was Murray Somerville. He was this amazing British man from Oxford. He'd come all the way from Oxford, England, to be the conductor at our church. And my mom was the soprano section leader, so I got to be a soprano section leader as well. And I made $400 a month. This was when I was like 17, 18 years old. And so I got to do that. And Murray was very encouraging of me. I memorized the Haydn Harmonie Messa and the Mozart Requiem and all these beautiful pieces of music that I adored. And I memorized them. And Murray would like stop choir practice and single me out and say, have you memorized this? So he was very proud of me, and he always gave me opportunities for solos and duets with my mom or my sister when I was young, which was an amazing, it just, because I had a really bad choir teacher named Kimberly Clark when I was in high school. She actually let me into the jazz choir, the elite jazz choir, when I was a freshman, at the end of my freshman year, because I was so talented, that she put me into the elite, like, senior jazz choir when I was 16, because she knew that I could do it. And I passed for some reason, I passed the sight reading exam really well. I got 11 out of 12 bars right, or 10 out of 12 bars. And that was, I don't know how I did that, but I got to sing a lot of solos in that choir in high school. But after a year, Kim tried to throw me out of that choir because she could tell that I was way far above and beyond all of my peers, and it was very clear, and she really wanted to kind of put me in my place because I was quite an ego head, like I said. I was really self-confident and wasn't going to let anybody, get me down or discourage me. And she was the one who would always make fun of me when I'd come into class with tutus and tuxedos and weird things on my feet or my hair or makeup or weird jewelry or whatever. And she'd say, it's a circus in town and whatever. So I never let her get me down. In my sophomore year of high school, me and my sister won the high school talent show with We Are Women from Candide, which was an amazing experience. She played the old lady and I played Cunegonde, sang a high D at the end or something, and it was just blew everybody out of the water. It was an amazing, I wish I had that recording. That was an incredible experience. And then I actually, when I was 17 years old, I got to sing on the radio station because I was really, my dearest friend and mentor from when I was a teenager was named Will Griffin, and he was actually an older gentleman, older tenor. He had a beautiful, creamy tenor voice. And he taught me this amazingly complex aria from one of the Mozart operas that I loved. But I can't remember what it was. I have a recording of that sitting or floating around somewhere. So I got to sing that on the radio station when I was 17 years old with Will from beginning to end. I didn't even mess up once. There's a recording somewhere. I'll find it. And then I got to sing it at a concert, a Mozart concert. And I sang one of the arias from Die Zauberflöte as well. But these were very complex arias that I was singing when I was a teenager. So when I was singing in college, my college voice teacher was really pulling me back and having me sing a lot more pastoral, simpler songs, which was frustrating to me, which is why I auditioned for The Tempest and was doing all of that. And it really pulled me into being really interested in doing theater, doing theater instead of just straight music. So I remember I sat down at my desk in my room, in my little dorm room, and I just pressed the record button on my computer, looked at these little lyrics, these Shakespeare lyrics, and just kind of sang whatever came to my mind by looking at these lyrics. And I ended up making this beautiful little arias, 4 little arias, and of course they were all very high, very up in the high C, D, E, F, G range, just because that's what I can do so naturally. That's what I do so naturally. So I sang those, and then I remember I brought them back to Andrew's office the next day, and I played it for him, and he was going around showing all of the teachers, going, look, listen to what Zoe's done. This is incredible. She just did this on the fly. This is incredible. Isn't this amazing? And so he was really tooting my horn and giving me a lot of confidence, which was great, and because I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing. And he got a young piano teacher who was a really amazing classical piano player, and she came in and made this really crazy avant-garde accompaniment for this music that I'd made. And she recorded that, and then I had that as my accompaniment track for the show. So we did 6 performances, and I sang every time. I sang these 4 little arias that I'd written and stopped the show cold. I was put up on people's shoulders and flown around the stage, and put in all these interesting positions, and I was singing these really complicated little pieces that I'd written myself. And I remember at one point Andrew was trying to teach the arias that I'd written to the other little spirits, and of course they couldn't sing it. So he said, well, I guess you're going to sing it. So, and then also within a few months of me doing The Tempest, I auditioned for Amal and the Amal and the Night Visitors, which is an amazingly cute, beautiful, lyrical, musical opera about the four wise men seeing the star above them and coming to find the baby Jesus. But it's from the perspective of a poor mother and her son who is a cripple and has a little cane that he walks on because he can barely walk. But he's like a really magical thinking little child, probably 5 to 10 years old, 10 years old maybe. And he walks with a crutch, and it's the cutest little arias. And the arias start with like him going out and looking at the stars, and then he comes back and he says, "Mother, mother, mother, come and see. I want to be sure that you see what I see." And he's talking about seeing the tail of the comet that's over the where the baby Yeshua is being born. So it's really interesting, that perspective, but it's kind of like a modern opera based on this classic story. And my friend Reggie Watts actually played one of the three wise men. And Reggie has this incredibly deep, profound, like bosso profondo kind of voice. And he actually won the, when we first went into the school, I got invited to audition, to do like the whole big audition to see if I could get a full ride to the school. And of course I lost because I cracked on a high note, so I was so scared. Because my voice teachers gave me, had me do a really heavy nasal cleanse with really heavy salt, like, 20 minutes before I went on, and of course I fucked up my voice, so I cracked on the high note. It was so embarrassing. I'd done it perfectly up until then, and then I did this horrible nasal cleanse, and then I fucked it up. But I remember when I saw Reggie for the first time, like, this guy's going to win. Everybody's going to love him. He's going to get full ride and everything. Because he looked like this, he had this really deep, amazing voice. And he was the same age as me. And of course he had the most incredible, he was just a big guy, big black guy, bald head, just a huge guy. And he had this amazing, unique voice. And I think he was from Alabama or something. But we became friends over the school year. He was one of the only friends I actually had in school. He was very supportive and sweet towards me. He was very busy. But he played one of the three kings, and I was playing the little boy, and I think I had a piece where I sang to him, and he sang to me, and it was so touching. But we did one performance, like a few days before Christmas. And my whole family came. Will Griffin came. My parents came. My friends from Nashville. Not really. Nobody really. My parents came and Will came. And then a lot of the people from the school who had heard about me doing this amazing role and doing this amazing thing when I was so young, they all came to see me for this one performance in this tiny little church. And my mom recorded it, and I don't know if the recording exists anymore. It was beautiful. I had like a very short haircut where it was, like a little pixie cut. I had a perfect haircut for these roles, for Ariel and for Amal. Just, I looked very pixie-ish and little and young, and it was perfect. So it was an amazing experience. But near the end of the show, the little boy actually gets healed in some magical way, because I think he wants to give up his crutch to the little baby Yeshua, and I think some kind of magic happens and his leg is healed. And so he's supposed to like start jumping up and down and jumping around and dancing, right? And I had a very weak ankle. I've always had like weak ankles. When I was young, I would sprain my ankle all the time on the trampoline, just jumping around. And so I sprained my ankle when I was in the middle of this jumping around, I'm healed experience. And it hurt, and I was having to sing joyfully, like, look, I'm healed, Mama, look at me. and I had to jump around and sing in joy while my ankle was like on fire at the end of this performance. And then I remember sitting out, people were talking to me afterwards and going, that was incredible. And I had my foot up and it was all bandaged and crap and swollen. And they were going, I think she's taking this a little bit too far. And my mother had to say, no, she actually sprained her ankle while doing the show. So yeah, so that happened. I went home for Christmas. But then I remember actually one of the women who were in the program with me, I remember her being a very jealous type. And I remember her telling me after I'd done these 2 performances in my basically my first semester freshman year of college, which never happens. I played 2 major roles at 19 years old in my freshman year, first semester. It was amazing, it was incredible opportunities for me. And I remember in my second semester, I wasn't doing as much, and I remember this jealous kid was saying to me, you just got really lucky because there were 2 roles that were perfect for you. You were perfectly suited for them, and you got them and you were lucky. And it's unlikely that you're ever going to get those kinds of roles ever again while you're in school, maybe ever at all. Which she was right, really. I mean, that's kind of reality. But at the time, I think she said it because she was really jealous. Now that I have thought about it over the years. That would happen often, where, young, kind of generic-looking women would kind of try to make me feel singled out or make me kind of feel alone because they were jealous of how talented I was. Because I was always a little freaky girl, but I was also extremely talented, so they know that was threatening to people and confusing. So it's one thing just to be weird. It's one thing just to be a little freak. It's another thing to be really freakish and really talented. I know that scares people a lot. So, but it was actually Andrew Kimbrough who gave me the courage to move to New York City when I was 20 years old. I finally managed to convince my mother. I said, Mom, I need to move to New York City. I don't want to be in the South anymore. I need to get away from this whole world. Please help me. And she said, okay, you can go to New York if you get into a conservatory. So I auditioned for one conservatory, actually, the Circle and the Square Theater School. And I got in. I remember I went that summer with my sister. And we saw like a ton of shows, Phantom of the Opera and everything. And I think we saw the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. No, I didn't see it, but that was in the theater that this Circle and the Square Theater School was actually existed. It existed in the basement. So I got the call, actually, because I'd been calling them all summer. I called them all summer long, just saying, is there space for me? Because they initially called me or sent me a letter that said I was on the backup list, right? I hadn't actually gotten in initially. So they said, you're on the backup list. So if anybody drops out, you'll be selected. So that my solution to that was calling them every single day and saying, has somebody dropped out? Has somebody dropped out? Has somebody dropped out? And I called every single day for months, just asking, can I be in the program? Because I wanted to move to New York City. And one day I got a phone call from the school, and it was the most life-changing moment of my life, in which they said, someone has dropped out. We have put you on the top of the list every time you've called, because that's what we do. Would you like to come and be in our school? And I was completely freaked out. I was like, yes. I told my mom. We're crying. I'm like fantasizing about, oh my God, I'm going to get out of Nashville. I'm going to finally be free. I'm going to be able to move to New York City and be by myself and have a wonderful life that I've always dreamed of. And I did, and it was a nightmare. I was very lonely. I was crying all the time. I actually lived in a place that was run by Catholic nuns. And my only friend was my cousin, Peyton, who had a motorbike, and he was a businessman and had a lot of money, and he would take me out to eat all the time and take me around on his motorbike, which was really nice, and take me to little shows here and there, and that was actually really fun. But I was really lonely a lot of the time, and I didn't have any friends, and I would spend a lot of time in my dorm room crying my fucking eyes out because I was just so lonely and didn't know what to do. I was missing my twin sister too. I'm a twin, so I was really close to my sister, and leaving her was really hard. She was going to Chattanooga, somewhere in Chattanooga for school. She was a very normal person in comparison to me. So So I went to class, and I remember it just being so disappointing because everybody was so normal. Everybody looked like a cookie cutter of everybody else, and so boring, and so everybody was so pretentious, and nobody was really very talented. In the singing class, nobody could really sing very well, but people were very pretentious, and it was just very annoying. And I wanted to sing, and I was very, discouraged by the whole experience. And whenever I did sing, people would be like, wow, 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 but they were also really envious of me because I never tried to fit in. I didn't try to talk to anybody or make friends. And I remember before I went to Circle in the Square, I'd gone to Mississippi to see my grandparents to say goodbye, and I had a full head of like rainbow hair, and my grandfather forced me to shave my head before I left. So I had a bald head when I got into class, and it was the winter time actually. And it was so horrible. And I think I tried to fit in a little bit. I think I tried to like dress normally and be normal for a bit, but then I failed miserably and started dressing like a clown every day. And I went down to 8th Street and got a bunch of wigs and stuff and makeup, and would go to class dressed in a pink wig and makeup and clown outfits and stuff. And I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't make any friends. And I went to one voice lesson when I was that summer, or I don't remember when it was. But I'd met Thoth October 11th, 2008. And I remember I was going to a voice lesson like a few days before I met him on the Upper West Side. And I sang Gilda's aria from Rigoletto, actually, and I sang it really well, surprisingly. And then I went wandering around Central Park and I found Thoth. But eventually, I remember I was trying to go and play with Thoth and see him and dance with him and go to class, and I was skipping out on class because I didn't want to like miss being around him. So I tried to go to class, and the kids singled me out and said, we need to talk about the pink elephant in the room, because they're like, you're embarrassing us, you're confusing us, you dress so strangely, you don't try to fit in, you don't try to make friends. This is just so hard for us. And I remember running out of the room and crying and saying, this is theater, I'm an artist, why can't I just be myself, why can't you accept me the way I am? And it was so horrible. And I remember going to the tunnel and telling Thoth that they call me the pink elephant, and Thoth said, you're not a pink elephant, you're a pink angel. So that was my name for a while. And eventually I dropped out of school because like I said, I was trying to like pray for him with Thoth at the tunnel 5 days a week and go to class. And of course I had to choose one or the other. And I hadn't gone to class for a couple of weeks. And Thoth didn't know. So he eventually found out, and he said, you need to try to go to class. I don't want you dropping out because of me. And so I went, and I remember one of the cookie cutter girls, who was very boring, turned to me and said, I refuse to work with you. We all thought you dropped out. And it was very mean to me. And then I went upstairs and I called Thoth, and I'm crying and saying, Thoth, I can't do this anymore. People are being mean to me. And he said, okay, you can quit. And so that was that.